here we go.
Every single time he's got the power to educate, the power to thrill and memorize. Rule has the power of will. He's got it all wrapped up in his insatiable mind. Just a Santos. He's one of a kind. He's your man. He's your champion. Take a ride in his mind and you'll see. International man of memory. He's your man. He's your champion.
10 seconds. And you're on.
Boom! What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. I'm your host, Alan Sakyan. Super excited to be talking about memory skills training. We have Chester Santos joining us on the show. Hello.
Thanks for having me. Great. I'm really happy to be here, Alan.
Back on for round 2 with Chester. So excited. Chester was one of the first guests we had on the show like a year and a half ago, maybe within the first 10 episodes or so. And now it's almost 500 of these. And I'm so happy to have you back. Chester, you authored a book in the meanwhile. You've been touring the world, giving talks on memory skills training. So for those that don't know Chester's background, he's a U.S. memory champion and memory skills expert that helps people around the world to unlock their full memory potential. He's also the author of Instant Memory Training for Success and Mastering Memory, Techniques to Turn Your Brain from a Sieve to a Sponge. And you can find the links in the bio below, chestersantos.com, as well as his LinkedIn, Twitter profiles, and the Mastering Memory book. Chester, let's start things off by asking you, what are your thoughts on the direction of our world?
Yeah, so my thoughts on the direction of our world. Obviously, we are a very, nowadays, tech-focused world, right? We're a very technology-driven society, and, my worry is that we might not be, we think technology can solve everything. We're relying on technology to solve all of our problems, but we need to just be a little bit wary about, we need to remain focused also on human development, right? We need to be focused on our personal development at all times. It's still very important, and it will always be important. I think we're living in an age now of digital dependency, is what I like to call it. I gave a talk at the end of last year at the International Festival of Brilliant Minds on the danger of digital dependency, and that is that we are outsourcing not only our memory, but other mental functions to electronic devices, so we are losing those abilities. I always emphasize that it is incredible what these devices can help us do, and they are incredibly useful to us in our business, personal life, nowadays in school as well. There's a lot that they can do for us, but I just want people to be aware that we need to not just completely outsource our mental abilities to those devices. We need to continue to use our brains, continue to exercise our brains, or I think we're going to find out that some big problems develop down the line.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, especially on this deeper time perspective, where we have really just in the last 50 years been, in the last couple decades, they've become ubiquitous, these computing technologies. And prior to that, throughout the whole historical development of the human species, we've never been able to do things. Well, we had a book to potentially write things to store our memories, our thoughts. Mm-hmm. But with these devices now and the way that the attention economics are working, we're really working into some grounds that we aren't really that aware of the future impacts of. And I'm happy that you bring that up as the direction of our world, because in a little bit, maybe towards the end, I want to talk to you about the future of us interacting with the technology and working on our own human development, our own biological development. Really do wonder what's happening to the brain as we offset so much of our memories to the devices, and then what is actually happening like neurophysiologically inside of our brains, and how much harder is it making it to do things like remember someone's name, or to remember a string of things that can help us in a conversation or a presentation or any of these things.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about the actual physiology. The changes taking place in the brain wouldn't be my area. It's going to be probably more Dr. Ghazali, who I think you've had on this show. Him and I have given some presentations together in the past. He would probably better be able to address the physiology. What I address in my presentations are more the skills, like the abilities, like remembering phone numbers, for instance. We all used to be able to remember the phone numbers of so many friends, family members. We could easily dial those from memory. I remember growing up, my parents would give me emergency phone numbers that they thought were important for me to know. We all could do that, but nowadays, really, you give someone one phone number and they feel paralyzed. Like they have no hope of remembering even that one number. It's getting so bad that there are a lot of people out there nowadays that don't even know their own phone number. So it's a really good example of the use it or lose it principle. And I think it illustrates one thing that happens when you really outsource your memory to these electronic devices. Another one that isn't necessarily something I don't talk about it that often or address it with my types of trainings, although it could be applicable, and that is navigation, right? So you're finding now, because everyone's becoming dependent on GPS, you're just not learning your city, right? You just aren't learning the streets anymore, how to navigate. New York City taxi drivers were at one point world famous for their memory ability, so much so that universities were doing research on their brains. But nowadays you get into a taxi, and if the network is down, you just have to sit there. They have to I've been in a taxi where they have to restart their phone and everything, because they're not learning the streets anymore. They no longer know how to navigate because they've been completely dependent on these electronic devices. Uber and Lyft, it's even a little bit worse because they never put forth that effort to really learn. So you have people that have been driving Uber and Lyft in a city for maybe many years now, and if something's wrong with the app, you have to sit there. Nobody knows how to get anywhere, right? So it's just another, I think, example that people can relate to, and it illustrates a little bit of that danger in completely shutting off your brain to just let these devices do everything for you, right?
And maybe one of the arguments that people are making is that now that I don't have to store so many of the phone numbers or the maps of the streets, that I can then fill my mind with new things, new technologies that are at the cutting edge, and that could potentially be part of the case. But also we do very easily see that if I used to be able to take a phone number or even a pattern of turning on streets and remember it really quickly, but now it's so much more difficult for me to do that, how is that impacting all of the other aspects of memory of my life?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to get across there. And I wanted to address that issue that you brought up. It's a separate issue. It's something that I hear people say so often, but in reality, are they filling their brains up with all that new knowledge about the new they're not. They're also outsourcing that to devices, right? But really what I want to hit on here is that classic excuse that I hear, oh, I don't want to fill up my brain with all this useless information. Really, I'm sorry to say and be blunt, that's just laziness talking, right? That's really all it is. People are just being lazy, not committing certain things to memory. If there is truly a limit to human memory, we are not going to find it in our lifetimes, right? You know about some of the demonstrations that I've done with thousands of pieces of data, right? There are people that have memorized, people used to be able to memorize entire volumes of ancient texts even, right? So there isn't really a limit to human memory. And in fact, I think it's important for me to stress that how memory and learning works it's the complete opposite of what people are thinking, right? So in fact, the more that you learn, the easier it becomes to learn new things. Because learning and memory always comes down to creating a connection in your mind between something new that you are trying to learn and something that you already know. So in fact, the more that you know, the easier it's going to be to learn things. So this concept, this idea of I don't want to fill my head with this useless, that actually doesn't make any sense at all. And it's just an excuse.
So you do actually want to take in things like remembering a close person's phone number or a street pattern, or even the way that a new technology is connecting to something that you already previously know about another field, let's say. And then if you, the more variables you have in your worldview, the more perspectives that you're carrying at the same time in your worldview, the easier it becomes for you to be able to see the world from all these different angles instead of just one straight echo chamber of an angle.
Exactly. So the more you actually have stored in your brain, the easier it's going to be for you to learn and understand new things, new concepts. Yeah.
Chester, who were you growing up that got you interested in memory?
Very good question there. So just growing up, I often got the comment from people, I kept hearing a lot, wow, you have a really good memory. And back then, I didn't have really any sort of formal methodology, any sort of really elaborate system or anything. I guess I was just naturally good, basically, at coming up with a connection between something new that I was trying to remember and something that I already knew. I just had my own way of coming up with these associations. And so people would say, wow, you have a good memory a lot. And then I was flipping channels one night. This was back in the year 2000. And I happened to catch a segment on ABC's 2020, that evening news show. There was a segment on the United States Memory Championship, and it sparked my interest because people had been telling me that I had this good memory, right? So I became interested, but when I looked into what the best people in the country were scoring in these events, memorizing hundreds of names, hundreds of digits, decks of playing cards in minutes, I quickly found out that although I had a good memory, I was nowhere near that level. Yeah. So that's when I started doing all of this research into what are really some ways that people can go about magnifying their memory ability. And eventually, well, what happened was I read everything I could find online, books, did all sorts of research. I played around with many different techniques. A lot of it didn't work so well for me personally. I found what worked well for me personally, stuck to training myself in that subset of techniques until eventually I did win the US Memory Championship. And now, as you know, I've spent the last 10 plus years training other people around the world in the small subset of techniques that I feel can benefit the most in their career, in their personal life. And also this is really huge for kids in school.
Yes, so huge. The younger that we are when we start taking on challenges like these skill sets, I love the skill set of spaced repetition is a really good one that I've been using, that you've been teaching me. Also the story method. Actually, just to be completely blunt, Chester's skills that he taught me last year, a little over a year ago, were exactly why I was able to succeed as well as I did on the TEDx San Francisco talk that I gave, because I used your techniques to remember my key points. I painted really beautiful abstract visuals that were massive in size too, that I added senses to.
Oh, wow.
I had a beautiful story that I was spacing the repetition of, and then I was doing it backwards as well.
Awesome.
And then so by unlocking this in me, you've also made it easier for me to give presentations, for me to remember strings of things. I told you that I was driving down, I was in the passenger seat and I was with my uncle and mother, and my phone was off, battery was dead, and I had all these profound things that I wanted to retain, so I started doing the story method and spaced repetition, and I remembered a string of 12 completely unique bits of information that I was then able to, when I arrived and I was repeating it backwards in the car as well, I was able to write it down crystal clear when I got back.
That's so cool.
And so I love, and to be able to get this into children, young ages, and also your story about when you see other people that are memorizing these massive, in minutes, they're memorizing randomly assorted decks of cards, long strings of numbers, long string of names. Chester is, when he starts his talks, is giving 100 people, more than that even, their names one after the next by just hearing their name one time beforehand and shaking their hand. Wow, this is the capacity of the memory. You said ancient people were remembering massive pieces of like spiritual texts and things like that. I mean, the capacity is unlimited, and we, like you said, we have yet to, we'll never reach the full understanding. Maybe we will, of our memory limits.
Yeah, so, wow, I'm so glad to hear that you've been able to put this into practice and find it really useful. Definitely what I try my best to get that message out there. It's that with the right approach and just a little bit of practice, it really is amazing what you can do in terms of remembering things. And memory is fundamental to learning. It is a fundamental part of the learning process. There's no avoiding that. So really improving your ability to remember is going to have a positive impact on many different aspects of your career. Personal life, you'll find various situations, definitely for people in school. It's amazing what's possible, and it's just the right approach and a little bit of training and practice.
And then did you end up discovering the story method and spaced repetition? How did you figure out, okay, there's all of these memory champions, all these memory techniques, here are the ones that are, is it kind of personalized, like the ones that work best for each person, and then they kind of really get good at those and then try and win the championships with those and teach other people those?
Yeah, so good question there. What I have been teaching other people for the last 10 years and what I ended up focusing on, how I came about to this set curriculum that I would normally train people in. It's a wide variety of ways as to how I ended up, with what I am teaching now. It was all of that research I had done in the early days, since the year 2000, and my own personal experiences experimenting with all of that. And then also my experience training other people for the last 10 plus years, seeing what works for different people in different situations, and just through my other experiences and people that I've come into contact with, in my line of work. I'm able to, I feel very lucky, blessed to come into contact with amazing leaders in their field like Dr. Ghazali, and then also I got flown out I heard about spaced repetition. It's actually a well-known concept in psychology, right? Mm-hmm. This concept of spaced repetition as it applies to learning, but I first heard about it when I was actually flown out to Washington University in St. Louis. So they flew me out there and did some memory experiments on me for a few days, along with some Jeopardy champions. We were all part of something called the Superior Memory Project at Wash U in St. Louis. And while there, I was talking with the researcher. I said, this is what I do. Now I'm trying to train people around the world. How can I help students with this in particular? And they said, Chester, it's with all of the stuff that you've been teaching people, but add this concept of spaced repetition. And they were saying that, how students usually study for exams is they'll just cram all of the info in, like the night before, a couple of days before the exam. That is only good for short-term memory. That's it. So cramming a bunch of 20, 30 reviews done today will allow you to spit it all out on an exam, but then it just completely vanishes from your memory, right? You've lost that. But they were telling me, if students after the lecture, if they would review right after the lecture, then maybe a week later, then 2 weeks after that, then maybe a few weeks after that, if they space out their reviews, it will then lock into long-term memory, right? So really the ideal way to get things into long-term memory is with the types of techniques that I teach, in conjunction with spaced repetition, there are even some apps out there that people may have heard of that try to help you with this. Basically, the app will remind you probably when you should do your next review.
Yeah.
Right? So it's built around this concept. So it's a really well-known concept to help you more effectively put things into long-term memory.
Yeah, and you can do something as simple as you're at an event where you're learning information that you think is really important to you. The number one thing that I get, I guess, upset about when people are trying to learn is that I ask them about, like, are you going to review this tonight? Are you going to review this the next day? Are you going to review this? Because how much do you actually care about what you're learning? Because if you really care about what you're learning, you will go and review it the next day. You'll practice trying to teach it to someone else.
Yep.
You will revisit it the next week as well,
Yep.
because then that's how you can actually hack into storing this knowledge that you want to retain.
Yeah, one kind of, I guess, hack that I should mention is one of those reviews should come, it's recommended early on, right before you go to sleep. Do a review right before you go to sleep, because a lot of research has shown that if you review something soon before sleep, basically you're telling your brain to process that. Your brain will process the information overnight, and you will find that you wake up the next morning, you know it better than you did the day before without having done any additional reviews, but it's because your brain really churned that information overnight. It's one of the current theories as to why we sleep. So as of today, no one has the definitive answer as to why humans sleep. But some researchers do believe that part of it has to do with the consolidation of important information into long-term memory. So that's part of what your brain is doing overnight. So do a review before sleep of something important. It's going to help it get into the long-term memory.
Yeah. Yeah, Ron.
Say that again. What do I need to do to work on this before I go to sleep?
Memory. One of the great things that you can do is before you go to sleep is to think about the things that you really learned that day, especially that you want to focus on storing into and consolidating into with your past life experience, and that's one of the big things about why we sleep.
So just try to get into that habit. It's really easy for people to do, and it's amazing how just doing this one thing how much it will help. And it's something I recommend for names. So when people come to me and their goal is to really become better at remembering people's names, to get more out of business networking, to build better relationships with people in general, I recommend that in addition to all the techniques that I would teach, make sure that you're doing that before you go to sleep. So say you go to a party or you had a meeting that day, do a mental run through who was at that meeting today, right? Yeah. And then review their names along with the other techniques. I don't know if you want to get into that again, the techniques for names. I had mentioned it in the last interview. I'll go through it quickly now in case people missed the first interview.
Let's do that, yeah.
So techniques for names. Come up with a visual. It's simple but powerful and effective. So if someone's name is Mike, maybe you see a microphone. If the name is Jane, I might visualize a chain. So there's a sound-alike thing going on there. Alice, I might visualize a white rabbit because that would remind me of Alice in Wonderland. There are various ways as to how the image can remind you of the name, but come up with an image, something you can picture in your mind, to remind you of the name, and then ideally you also want to link that to the person's look. So let's say you're meeting someone named Alice, and to you, this is just to you personally, what you notice about her when you're meeting her is her hair. You think, in your opinion, she has really beautiful hair. You might then imagine this white rabbit jumping around in her hair or getting tangled up in her hair, okay? So how this works is the next time you see her, all you have to ask yourself is what is noticeable to me about her look? If you had noticed the hair before, you're very likely to notice it again, and you'll be amazed instantly the image of the white rabbit's going to come right back because you made that connection in your brain. So the white rabbit's going to come back to you, and that might remind you of the name Alice. So that's one way to do it. It sounds a little bit crazy, maybe a little bit out there, but it's very powerful, effective. Anyone can get good with just a little bit of practice. I would recommend this type of visual-based technique. There are many others. You know, if you take a look at my online stuff, you can find other techniques. I won't get into too much time. I don't want to spend too much time just on names, but this is going to be more effective than other things you'll find in business success books. They don't tend to have very good techniques if they have as part of a chapter on names. They'll say, just repeat the name over and over to yourself, right? They'll say, imagine writing the name in big print with a marker on their forehead. Or they'll say, ask them, how do you spell your name, Bob? Which would be silly if it's a lot of common names. It would be dumb to ask them how to spell their name. But if those things help you at all, it's only going to work in the very short term, right? Because the next time you see them, you have nothing to help you. There's nothing to help cue up or pull up in your mind the memory of the name.
Yep.
But what I teach you will be based on the person's look, so it's more effective the next time you see the person.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that one, and that adds that visualization component to it. It also repeating their name immediately after you meet them, mentioning.
I had given you those steps last time. I didn't want to go
Too
over
deep.
them. Yeah,
Okay,
again, but yeah, just little things go a long way in terms of memory. A little bit goes a long way.
Yeah, and to continuously practice that too. Let's do. We did a demo of the list of words, which it's so funny that I'm literally seeing the story still of the words right now. It's so funny how just a random string still, like whatever it is, 18 months later, can still be visually recalled like that.
Yeah, it is amazing. I get people that will email me years after attending one of my presentations, and they're like, is this the list of words? And they got it right. It's just because what's happening with these techniques that I teach people is, without realizing it, you are using so much of your brain to encode the information into your memory. So let's do another demo, but a brand new one.
I love it. Let's do it.
That we didn't do last time. Actually, I have two in mind for this interview, some new stuff. So people that saw the first interview will still get a lot out of this one as well, hopefully. That's my goal. So before we do that, quickly I want to review the main principles. Visualization. I just talked about it in terms of names.
Yes.
So come up with a picture. Obviously names, but this will apply to anything at all. Okay, it could be points from a presentation and so on. Second thing, from there, add additional senses as you can, right? So don't just see it.
Pie, you smell the pie.
Exactly, right? There, you got it. So smell it, imagine even tasting it, get some additional senses, because what's happening there is when you do that, you're activating more areas of your brain and you are building more connections in your mind to that information. So it makes it easier to retrieve the information when you need it later, right? So that's the second thing to keep in mind. Third is make that all crazy, unusual, extraordinary in some way, right? So you're seeing it, you're getting these additional senses involved, and remember to make it all crazy and unusual, because there's a psychological aspect to human memory. With no effort at all, we tend to remember things that catch us by surprise, that are strange, unusual. I like to mention, if wherever you're watching this interview, if an elephant crashes into that room that you're in right now and it starts to spray water on you, if that were to really happen right now as you're watching
You'd never
this,
forget it.
you would never forget it. You probably tell that story for the rest of your life. You will never believe this. Okay, I was watching that awesome simulation series, and they were interviewing some memory guy. When I was watching that, out of nowhere, I'm not even joking with you, an elephant just crashed into the room, sprayed water at me, right? That might be stuck in your head forever without you even trying to commit that to memory.
Yeah.
Whereas other times when, it's something important to remember, you put forth a lot of effort and you can't get it into your long-term memory, right? But the elephant just went in an instant. So that is knowing that there is that aspect to how our mind works, realizing that we can take advantage of it, we can harness it, and we can actually apply it to presentations, names, foreign language vocabulary, exam material, and so on. But we just have to realize that and try to incorporate it into what we're doing. So we're going to build a story. This is called the story method. I want for you to try to commit to memory. First, I'm just going to rattle off the words, and then I'm going to work you through the exercise. So this word list, different than before. This one will be cloud, bicycle, elephant, watermelon, cat, egg, rabbit, mud, bird, whistle, jungle, turkey, sword, computer, and pizza. Okay?
Damn.
Now, usually, without any sort of memory training or knowledge in ways to improve your ability to remember things, when presented with that list, people are just like, their mind is, wanting to explode. They're like, there's no way I'm going to remember that, not unless you give me a lot of time to do it. But as you know, when you use the right approach, the right technique, we're gonna commit that to memory in about 3 minutes. That's it. Should take about 3 minutes. And then everyone watching this, they can follow along, and they'll be able to recite the words, hopefully forwards and backwards, believe it or not. So just have fun with this, all right? See what I described to you as best you can, all right? So
Visualization.
so we had the cloud was first. So just visualize this giant cloud, whatever that looks like for you, all right? Falling out of the cloud is a bicycle. Right, falls out of the cloud, just falling down.
Super unusual. That's
Yeah, it's just falling out, and falling down towards the earth. This bicycle, the bicycle hits the ground. And it starts just going along by itself. The bicycle, right, just going along by itself. The bicycle smashes into an elephant. All right, I like elephants, I guess. Smashes into an elephant. Picture that. All right. Spinning on the back of the elephant is a giant watermelon. There's a giant watermelon. All right. And exploding out of the watermelon, a cat. A cat explodes out of the watermelon. All right. The cat now runs and crashes into an egg. All right. The egg cracks open and a rabbit jumps out and starts hopping around. This rabbit starts hopping around, okay? Picture that. The rabbit hops into a huge pile of mud, all right? Hops into some mud and it splatters all over the place, this mud. The mud starts to splatter onto a bird. The mud starts to splatter onto a bird. Maybe see this crazy looking bird, all right? And the bird is blowing a whistle. The bird is blowing a whistle. It drops the whistle into a jungle. It drops a whistle into this giant jungle. And there is a turkey. You see this turkey just wandering around the jungle. You're like, what is a turkey doing wandering around in this jungle, right? See the turkey. The turkey starts to play around somehow. I can't explain how it's doing it. Just use your imagination. It's playing with the sword. The sword goes through a computer screen, just right through the face of the computer screen. And out the back of the computer comes a pizza. Now you're hungry, you want to eat that pizza, or maybe you start to eat the pizza even. So that was it. I'm just going to quickly review that. You'll just replay through this little story. So we start out with that giant cloud. What fell out of it? Bicycle. The bicycle crashed into what?
Elephant.
The elephant. What was spinning on the back of the elephant?
Watermelon.
What exploded out of it was a cat. The cat crashed into the egg. What cracked out of the egg? It was a rabbit. The rabbit jumped into the mud. The mud was splattering on the bird. The bird was blowing a whistle. It dropped the whistle into the jungle. What was wandering around the jungle? A turkey. The turkey started to play with the sword, which went through the computer
screen.
And the pizza fell out the back, right? So now Alan and people watching this can follow along, do their best to give those random words. Go ahead, in order.
All right, let's see. So, cloud, bicycle, elephant, watermelon, cat, egg, rabbit, mud, bird, whistle, jungle, turkey, sword, computer pizza.
100%, man. You got
Nice,
it.
bro.
Awesome.
Nice.
Great job, man. Under pressure, I know it's not. You don't always have guests on. They're gonna like put you through a brain
That's great.
exercise like that and test you on the spot.
In
but
3 minutes, like you
yeah,
said.
I didn't. You
How
know, I
long
don't know
is
how
that
long.
string?
I don't know how long exactly we took, but probably it was a few minutes or so.
And
that
was that
was
15
that was
words?
15 random words.
15
Yeah,
random
15
words.
random words locked in just like that. And again, people that were following along are going to find even from a month from now, they might still know those forwards and backwards without ever even reviewing it again, because you are using so much of your brain when you're using these techniques without realizing it. Right?
Chester, as soon as you were like, envision this cloud, and then all of a sudden a bicycle falls from the cloud. I mean, like literally, the more crazy, like you said,
Yeah.
these outliers, these more
Yep.
crazy things, it crashes into an elephant, right? Or the other one was that the turkey is holding a sword, right? You know, the more outlier these things are,
Yep.
out of the back of the computer falls a pizza, you
Yep.
know? So that these things are so abstractly different than normal life, like the elephant crashing through the wall of the room and spraying you with water,
Yep.
that you commit them faster
Yep.
to memory.
Yeah, so that's an important principle to always keep in mind when you are using these sorts of memory techniques. And there are all sorts of other techniques on my website. I have something new, brand new this year. I've never had it in previous years. I launched an online memory school, I like to call it, because what it provides you with is some core training that used to be like, I used to sell that as one course. It's the equivalent of that course, core training. Then you have advanced training that you can go through after that. And then it's ongoing training every month, new videos that I upload every month. And it's a video training. My course before used to be like an audio, you were listening to it and then you'd follow along on the website. So this is via high definition videos, video tutorials. So it's a really cool memory school, and you'll learn other techniques, many other techniques, but the one important principle that you'll always apply is that psychological aspect to memory. I wanted to go through a brand new exercise. We didn't do one like this last time. Well, it's similar to that one, but there's a little difference here. I want to do it because I want to impress upon people the fact that, you know, this stuff doesn't just apply to, you know, an elephant and a watermelon and a cat, right? This applies to even, it can be complex types of information. This can be points from a presentation. This can be helping you learn the difference between one concept and another one. They're similar concepts, but they have these two things make them different, right? Remembering that sort of stuff. I was a speaker. I think you know. I don't know if I mentioned it in the last interview, but you know my background. So they had me at Harvard. You know, to the Harvard Graduate Council. You can see a testimonial on my website where they're talking about how I had the graduate students going through this sort of stuff. So Harvard business students, law students, medical students. It can be complex types of information as well. This exercise will show you how it's not just a elephant and a watermelon. So you're going to visualize, Alan, some giant machines, all right?
Okay.
So we'll just take about 1 minute, this one. Giant machines, whatever that looks like to you. And these giant machines smash up a huge pile of gold and silver, all right? Gold and silver.
Okay.
Rising up out of the gold and silver, vehicles. Whatever that image looks like to you, vehicles.
Okay.
Shooting out of the windows of the vehicles, medicine.
Okay.
And exploding out of the medicine, oil. Maybe, you know, petroleum oil, the black oil that will be easiest to visualize. That was it, man. I'm going to go through this again. You've got these giant machines. They were smashing up the gold and silver. What rose up? Vehicles. What shot out of the windows of the vehicles? It was medicine. What exploded out of the medicine? It was oil. All right, this one's quick and easy. Give it a try. Do your best.
Yeah. Okay. So the machines, the gold and silver, the cars, the medicine, the oil.
You got it, man.
That was
it. That was the whole exercise. So what you did there without realizing it, or maybe you did, I'm not sure. What we did there is we tricked people into memorizing the top 5 exports of the UK. So so if you were to look that up right now, what people would find if they looked it up, listed as the UK's top exports, it will say machinery, precious metals, vehicles, pharmaceuticals, and oil. So that exercise gives you an idea of how what we're basically doing here is we're building just mental note cards, mental cue cards, just basically what you would write down on a short list of notes. Instead, you're building these note cards in your brain so that when you meet with clients, potential clients, or a presentation in front of colleagues, you have command of this information. People are like, wow, Alan knows his stuff. Obviously, Alan, knows something about this area, right? Whereas, again, what I like to stress, because I know people will probably write this in the comments, I get it all the time, oh, well, these days you don't need to remember stuff, right? Maybe you wouldn't need to remember that in meeting with the potential client, or if you're giving a presentation, you could have that all on the slide and just read it off the slide. It's not needed, but you're going to be like 99% of other people out there, whereas nowadays you really have an opportunity to be more impressive, right? Because nowadays nobody's remembering anything, so if you actually committed that to memory, you are really better able to demonstrate your expertise. The impression is going to be, wow, Alan really knows his stuff, and you're going to be more memorable to people, more impressive and more memorable.
Yeah,
I just hope the kids hear this.
Yeah.
It's for you, kids.
It's for you kids, really. Because when the vast majority of people are conforming to using these appendages and storing the data there, and when you take this new path of really mastering these memory skills, you are an outlier then in the world.
Exactly.
Because you can just be, it's funny at an event, just literally be like, do you know what the top 5 exports are of the United Kingdom?
Yeah.
No, I don't. Well, actually, I can walk you through a really beautiful story of remembering how to do machines, precious metals, cars, pharmaceuticals, oil. And if you can carry that mental note card with you, imagine now, how many mental note cards can we carry with us about the complex world that we live in? In those mental note cards, instead of, because I'm an avid note taker, and I gotta remind myself frequently, and I told you this last time, is that I gotta remember sometimes that I really need to take certain things that I'm storing into the appendages of computers and rather try and remember that string of 5, 7, 10, 12 items that can then be a mental note card that I can pull anytime, because I've closed my eyes, I've imagined a complex, beautiful visual with added senses that are outliers, scenarios, these types of things. Chester, this is critical.
Yeah, it can be so useful in many different ways, and it, as I hope people realize, it isn't hard to do. A little bit goes a long way. It can help to make you more memorable. There's so many ways that this can benefit you. One thing I've been working on since the last time I was here, I started working more on my social media. So I have been filming 1-minute tips every week, posting them to LinkedIn. I think you have my LinkedIn link in the notes, Twitter, and also Instagram. Yep. So Chester J. Santos is my Twitter. It's also my Instagram as well. I'll post every week, or maybe sometimes it'll be every other week, depending on what's going on with me in terms of my speeches and presentations that week. But tips from all over the world, and I will talk about how that location in some way relates to memory. One that I posted from Venice, Italy, it's the birthplace of Casanova. So we've all heard of Casanova, the world's greatest lover, right? So in researching him, I didn't know this before I did the research. Apparently, he was very charming to both men and women. People found him very interesting, very charming, partly because of his vast knowledge from so many different areas, right? So there are stories written about him that describe his incredible memory ability. He just could learn things very quickly, and this helped, to make him a more charming guy. Another thing I mentioned, I haven't posted this one yet, the full tip, you'll get a preview in this interview. I'll post one from Verona, Italy about, because Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, the setting is Verona. I'll talk about how just, having some interesting quotes committed to memory it just makes you more interesting in conversations, right?
Yeah.
So there's just a couple more examples there. Again, as I opened the interview today with, in this technology, very technology-driven society, I think we need to be aware that there still is a lot of value in developing human beings, right? Personal development, there still really is a lot of value in it. And it can, I think nowadays, maybe more than ever, at least more than any other time in the last few decades, it can really benefit you because everyone's just turning off their brains. So if you can demonstrate that you have some skills,
Yeah.
it's impressive.
To take an example like Casanova and see the what could have potentially been just this relentless desire to take what was these profound inputs that experiencing into mental note cards and storing those across different fields and being able to recall those mental note cards and impress people that way can totally separate you from the crowds today. So Memory School is something that people can do at their own pace through your website?
Yeah, that's another great thing about it is, the first 2 courses, and I used to sell those as completely separate courses. How I have it set up right now, because it's brand new and I'm kind of, we'll see what it ends up being priced at later. But for now, although you get instant access to those courses, I'm not charging at the moment an enrollment or setup fee. I might later, because I'm giving you access to those courses right away that I used to charge hundreds of dollars for. But right now, no setup fee, and there's a free trial as well. So you can check it out, see if you like it, see if you're benefiting from it, and then after the trial is up, it's only $10 a week. So it's $40 a month. Really, it's peanuts, basically, in terms comparing that to how you're going to benefit in your career and personal life.
Yeah.
And definitely if you have kids in school, sign them up.
You want to separate from the masses with memory skills.
Yeah, definitely. So check it out on my website, Memory School.
Ooh, this has been so interesting. Thinking about all of the cool things that we can actually commit to memory. I mean, the UK export list was one of the just most profound awareness expansions for me, because it's now thinking about this list of, I was just studying some, American literature and some of these important poets and authors in American literature. And I was wondering, well, how can I commit people like Walt Whitman and T.S. Eliot? How can I commit these people to my memory more easily, like the 4 quartets that T.S. Eliot wrote, right? How can I commit these things more easily to memory? Or something like the Nobel Prize winner list and what they achieved, right? Things like that. These things that are important for us to remember, but that we frequently write into the technological devices. Sometimes we just look at it and then never try and commit it.
Yep.
Sometimes we take it and put it in the device to try and remember it. But how can I look at that information and store it in one of these beautiful mental note cards that I can then recall this list of Nobel laureates and something like that? That would be so cool. And also to know, because these are profound moments for society that have unlocked a lot of peace or a lot of prosperity in the sciences or literatures.
Yes.
So then, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but I want to know a little bit more on, there's a word here, it's mnemonics, the systems to improve memory. I love this word mnemonics, and that's kind of what you've been teaching, these different mnemonic systems. And we kind of talked about the neuroscience a little bit. Now, you did the BBC World News, you did that. That was a cool way of trying to take this to 100 million people, the importance of memory. You've been also doing corporate events and stuff, and like you said, you were in Italy doing these short bits, teaching people.
Yeah, so that's something I did in just the last couple of months. It was, I would say, my biggest TV appearance ever, because it turns out that BBC World News is the most watched news channel in the world. I didn't know that, but when they asked me to be on, they pitched me on that, this is a good opportunity. So I guess they have 120 million viewers in over 200 countries, and they had me on. They wanted me to come on and talk about the importance of memory skills to success in business. nowadays. So I talked about names, which we covered earlier. I hit a bit on the facts and figures to demonstrate your expertise, and I did what I felt was kind of well, you guys can try to find the clips online and see if you find it humorous, but I was bringing up, because Game of Thrones was big at that time when I was doing the interview. Everybody's watching the last season of Game of Thrones, so I tried to tie that in a little bit there. So I talked about how, well, I brought up a real world example too, but from Game of Thrones, Daenerys, the Dragon Queen, Daenerys Targaryen, she was able to speak all those different languages, right? And the places she was visiting, the peoples that she conquered or liberated, she was communicating with them on the show always in their own language. So that really helped to increase her rapport and helped to make her a more effective and charismatic leader. But then I also tied it to real life, and that is the real world example. This was in my 1 Minute Tips series from Milan, Italy, in front of the Milan Cathedral. Apparently that's where Napoleon was crowned the king of Italy. And then in researching Napoleon, I found out that you'll read a lot of stories about him and his amazing memory ability. So he could remember the names of apparently thousands of soldiers, believe it or not. And he could instantly memorize maps, for instance. So his memory ability really built rapport with the soldiers, but it also gave them more confidence in him and his abilities.
Yeah.
So this can be memory skills can be a really important leadership skill as well. So that's what the interview was like a couple of minutes or something they give you in one of these news shows, but that's what some of what I hit on during my interview.
Yeah, whoa, think about if you can, remember the names of the people that are involved with what you're, working on. If you can remember things like a vision that you have for the organization, and if you can store that in memory, people will believe in you more as a leader. Yeah, it's great to see the news outlets that have a great amount of viewership care more about teaching things like this and not just propagating fear. That's so important. Okay, teach us about we hit this at the very beginning. I want to make sure that this is kind of talked about regarding our future. We're going into the 2020s. We're seeing the technology just get smaller, the computing capacity get faster, the ubiquity of it get widespread. How do we as still biological beings function well in the exponential technology hodgepodge of mayhem that's happening?
Yeah, so we really just need to be aware of it. That's why we've known each other a while now. It's been a little bit more of the focus of my message during presentations. I used to not hit on it as much, but I'm really just trying to get across this message that there is a danger in digital dependency. I think we just need to be aware of it and realize that your brain is your most valuable and most important business asset, all right? There's no getting around that. Your brain is your most important asset, and we need to make sure that we're
in there. The heart too, brain
and heart. Yeah, brain and heart is important. You really can't do anything else, right? Develop any other skills without the power of your brain power, your mind power, and we're losing our brain power, mind power when we're not using it to do anything anymore, when we let the devices do everything for us. I think that we can find a little bit of a better balance. So for instance, like the case with phone numbers, I enter the numbers into my phone as well, and I encourage people to do that, but I'm just saying, why not also commit them to memory, right? And when you need, especially for close friends and family members, there's really no excuse for using the auto dial for them, right? Just make an effort to dial those numbers from memory. Yeah, it's going to feel like work. I understand that, right? But how do you build up your biceps? You have to go in the gym, and it feels like work, and a lot of times we don't want to do it, right? And we're like, do I really need? Yeah, but that is what is necessary to grow your muscles, right? it's the same thing with your brain. You know, you need to exercise your brain. You need to use it in order to really keep it strong, right? And develop that brain power, that mind power. So I just hope that people will start to become more aware of this, and when they can, when the occasion arises, especially like phone numbers, just make that effort. Use your brain a little bit. Don't just completely turn your brain off, because I feel like people are really turning their brains off when they don't need to. And again, maybe in a couple of decades, I think it's more Dr. Ghazali's area than my area, but I know he's talking about that we're in a cognition crisis, right?
Yeah.
So we're probably going to find out in the coming decades what really the negative results, what the negative impact is of us just completely outsourcing everything to technology. I always want to acknowledge that technology is beautiful, technology is good, it solves a lot of problems, it helps us, but let's just not lose touch that, we are biological creatures, right? Like, let's not lose touch with that, and that we need to work on our personal development as well.
Yeah, I think Jamie Wheel on our show called it "Don't be a dopamine monkey."
Interesting. From the dopamine, that when you get a message, supposedly the dopamine goes off. Or
even the variable rewards in the feeds and the comments and likes.
Likes on your posts.
All that stuff. And versus being able to do something as simple as just commit something profound that you find interesting about the world to your memory. Commit it to your own memory and not the devices. Such a good action item. Chester, I don't think we asked you this one last time, so I want to ask you this. What do you think happens before birth, and what do you think happens after death?
Okay, definitely not my area. So, before birth, what is related, I guess, to what I'm doing is, I'm not an expert in that field or anything, but there are things that apparently the mother's listening to music or something, the baby can somehow process that in the womb, and it might help brain development. I don't know. I find that area I find it pretty interesting, actually.
Agreed. Yeah.
That maybe there are things going on in the womb, there are outside stimulus that can affect our growth and our development. So I think that's an interesting area to look into more. That's the best I'm going to answer that, what happens before we're born. And then what happens after death, I don't know, man. I have a ghost story. I don't want to tell the ghost story now, but I didn't believe in ghosts at all, but I feel like I did actually see one at one point, and that's up for debate. So I think maybe what I will say on this, what I can say more confidently, since this isn't my area at all, is that I do think there are things that we just don't understand.
That are supernatural.
That there are things that we just don't understand, that we don't really have science can't, as of today, can't really give you an adequate explanation.
Some people
for it.
even think that we come from somewhere beyond the physical plane to take the seat in these bodies, and I think that's very interesting as well. That can be explored better, and that we potentially go back to that.
Yeah, well, mind your business on that.
Well, mind your business.
Just pay attention to your 3D reality and stop asking questions.
Yeah, I think there's I think there's a lot that we just don't fully understand. That it'll be interesting to explore more in the future.
And then I think we asked you, but let's see if you have an update. Do you think we're in a simulation?
You asked me that before. I still don't think we're in a simulation.
Still don't think so? Okay.
Yeah, that's just my opinion. I still don't think we are. I just don't. I don't think we're in a simulation.
That's a good way to play the game. I agree. We're not. Stop asking these questions.
And then I think we asked you, what do you think is the most beautiful thing in the world?
Man, that's such a hard question. I guess, human beings in general, just the human experience is very beautiful. I was talking about the mind, you were talking about the heart, but both. I'm always amazed with just a lot of times I find myself completely amazed at everything that humans are capable of, in so many different, even just like dance. Like I try to go to the San Francisco Ballet opening night every year, and it always just blows my mind, like the whole, the skill level and just the beauty of it all, but not just dance, but I like America's Got Talent, that show, a lot, just to see the amazing talents that people have developed, the works of art, literature, but also technology. Like, blows my mind. How the heck am I watching like any movie that's ever been created? I can watch it almost instantly now, or any song, like, Alexa, play this song, and it just starts playing. Like, it's just...
We're live on 2 platforms right
We're
now
live
for the
on-
world to see.
The fact that that's happening, that, we're live right now all over the world, it's mind-blowing what humans have been able to accomplish in so many different areas. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I love that, Chester. Such a good answer. And then I also wonder on the terms of memory, could potentially things, people say the body keeps the score. So could it potentially be that some of these memories, these emotional experiences that we have, do they get stored in the heart or in the gut? Do they get stored in other areas besides the central nervous system? Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
These are interesting questions, again, potentially for like Dr. Zelli and others.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome, Chester. I feel like we did super well. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure, and I love it. Thanks for having me on again.
You're super welcome. We love having you on, Chester. We're excited to do another episode with you down the line as things keep going. We got to practice more of the techniques that you were teaching us in this episode. We hope that others that were watching, please practice these memory techniques. Your memory skills are a great way to separate yourself in the exponential technology age. Practice these things like the story method, the spaced repetition. Get going with practicing this and sharing it with your friends, your families, coworkers, people online on social media. Get sharing these things. And check out the links in the bio again to chestersantos.com, his LinkedIn and Twitter profiles, his book down there. Also, go and check out his memory school. Get involved in the memory school. Get practicing again with these techniques. Shout out to Ron Vargas for producing and directing. Thank you very much, Ronnie. And also support the artists, the entrepreneurs, the organizations, the spiritual leaders around the world that you believe in. Support Simulation. Our links are below. Support us PayPal, Patreon, on our cryptocurrency links below. Also design cool merch and get paid for it. Join us, support us, grow. And go and build the future, everyone. We're going to end with more of Chester's awesome soundtrack. Manifest your dreams into the world. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Peace.